Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
Welcome back into the Dynasty Nerds Podcast. I am your host, Garrett Price, and here with my good friend, mentor, best-looking guy in the room at all times, Matt O'Hara.
Hey, man, thank you for the nice intro. Wow, that was a lot of extra salami on that sandwich.
You know what? Sometimes that compliment sandwich just needs to stack up.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you.
The insult's coming later. Don't worry.
Yeah, I know. No, I know. Everything is yin and yang, man. It's all going to come back.
It's all coming back around. Yesterday we talked about the AFC and the pass catching rooms, the wide receiver and tight end positions. And today we're on the NFC. So if you want to know more about the incoming draft class or the free agent class, tune into yesterday's episode. We talk about it maybe a little too long in the first 20-ish, 30-ish minutes of the show. But we get into those positions. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, tune into yesterday's show. But most people probably listen in order. And so you probably listened to yesterday's show before you listen to today's. And if that's the case, we're going to keep it going. And we're going to start with the NFC North. So, Matt, right now, Chicago Bears, they only have 3 guys in their wide receiver room. We have DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, and Tyler Scott. All of these players are signed through 2029 or 2030. So these 3 guys will be there for a very long time.
No doubt about it. They're not going anywhere. This is it's a nice little room for a young quarterback. I feel like DJ Moore, Rome Odunze obviously has flashed here and there, but hasn't maybe had the opportunities, which was kind of what we expected when he was drafted.
The JSN year.
That he was going to have to take kind of a year to acclimate himself and kind of climb the ladder within this wide receiver room. And I do feel like next year is kind of the year where he's going to blossom and become the player that we all kind of assumed that he was going to be coming out of Washington. So all together, I think this is kind of a room they need to obviously add bodies. They've got only three guys under contract, but there's not a whole lot you have to do from a high end standpoint here because you really do have 2 standout guys at the top of that, and Tyler Scott. Who knows what he is. But he's flashed here and there. So I think I think you have enough big play kind of potential there.
Yeah, and looking at the tight end, Cole Kmet, obviously very solid, steady. He signed through 2028. Gerald Everett signed this offseason, so you got a solid backup. So I just don't see that, is there a world where maybe Keenan Allen does come back to this team if they liked him and he liked them and everybody's happy? Definitely in the realm of possibility, but we're going to kind of have to just wait and see what happens with all the pieces on this team. I mean, there's rumor that maybe Poles is out too after this year, and you never know how all of this is going to play out. So we'll have to see who's the coach and whatnot, but I don't anticipate any of these 5 names that we've mentioned really going anywhere with the exception of maybe Gerald Everett, which doesn't really affect anything. So it's going to be these guys. They're going to add depth and maybe an old veteran, and that's about it.
Totally agree, man. Let's move on. We don't want to get hung up
Detroit.
on these guys for too long.
No, we don't need to. Another team that I don't think we're going to see a ton of movement from necessarily, wide receiver-wise for the Lions, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, both those guys, definitely Amon-Ra, absolute freaking stud. Jameson's come on this year, flashed. He's kind of shown what I think. I know some people have higher expectations for him than others. I think this is kind of what I envisioned Jameson Williams being. He's an elite field stretcher, and that works great for this team. He's not going to be the consistent fantasy asset that you want to be. Could he develop into that? Maybe. But either way, I think the team's happy enough with those 2 guys. They're happy with Sam Laporta, and they have an elite receiving running back in Jahmyr Gibbs. They don't really need a lot else. Now, we did see the guys that are still under contract, also Khalif Raymond and Antonio Green, but Tim Patrick's slowly actually become a legitimate part of this offense. So I wouldn't be surprised if they re-signed him and brought him back on a pretty team-friendly deal. But I think it's more or less like fantasy-wise, I don't see a lot really moving, changing, shaking for this team.
No, I agree, and I would just add with the Jameson Williams stuff. I do agree that on this team, that's going to be kind of his ceiling, is what you kind of mentioned him as like a field stretcher type of guy, and it boils down to Amon-Ra. Yeah, it just boils down to Amon-Ra St. Brown just being so much better than him that, you know what I mean? Like, he's never going to take over that elite number one kind of spot. I don't think he's got that in him regardless. But if there was a guy that maybe wasn't such a target hog on the other side of Jameson Williams, maybe he'd see a few more passes and be a little bit more consistent. But, you know, you're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days with a guy like Jameson in the position that he's in now.
And I don't want to fly through these teams too quickly, but so I don't think we're going to see much from Detroit. We just mentioned before, I don't think we're going to see a ton from Chicago outside of the addition of maybe a vet receiver like Keenan Allen. And I think we can kind of say the same thing about the Green Bay Packers. They have a ton of young wide receivers that have proven they can get the job done. And I remember talking about it in the offseason, and it has kind of played out this way where there's just so many good options that they're going to spread the ball around. And Jayden Reed's going to be the best of them, but he's still going to be a little maddening to own at times, which he's shown this year. We've seen 30-point games, and then he's put up, I think, 2 zeros. So it's just, you never know what you're going to get fully, but he's definitely the best option. But it's going to be a tough group. Tucker Kraft's really elevated himself to being the guy, especially with Musgrave out. I don't, even with Musgrave coming back when he does, I don't anticipate that changing. So I think this is another team where we know what the assets are. Tucker has the ability to maybe be one of those top tier tight ends. We'll see how things go. And then it's a lot of really good best ball wide receivers, but the only one you ever really feel like you can put in your lineup is Jayden Reed.
I think that was a pretty fair and accurate kind of description of this. I do hope that maybe Jayden Reed is able to develop a little bit here, or one of these guys, man. One of these guys develop. Come on, man.
Right.
Become the guy, please. And I hope it's Jayden Reed.
I think it's Jordan Love. I think he is really disciplined, and especially with none of these guys being a major diva, it's just kind of like, hey, when you're open, I'm going to get it to you, but I'm not going to force you the ball.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to play quarterback.
It is. Not as exciting for fantasy, though.
It is not. Yep, that's what I was going to say. I just kind of left that hanging out there for a second. I was letting the silence do the heavy lifting on that one. And you kind of came in and swooped in.
I stole the moment.
Well, silence doesn't really work that great on podcasts. So you did well. You did well.
Better in a small crowd. All right. Minnesota, man, I feel like a broken record. But the whole North, like, they're pretty set. Like,
no, they are. I forgot that they were even on there because I looked at them and went, man, this is the same thing. And I moved on. I thought we were going on to the South. But yeah, the Minnesota Vikings, what are you going to say? I mean, it's Justin Jefferson, it's Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Those guys are what make this offense click. And, you know, they're all going to be back next year. You know, everything else is just ancillary kind of pieces on the side. They'll definitely get more bodies in because they've only got 3 wide receivers. Another team that just has 3 guys. Yeah. So they'll be getting somebody else in, but it's not going to be anyone of note for fantasy purposes.
Nope. Yeah, you'll be excited if it's a 4th round receiver. Like that's your best case scenario as far as someone exciting adding to this team. So let's head to the South. There's a little more to be done here with these teams. So we won't fly through them quite as quickly. Atlanta Falcons, you made the note up there, not a lot of money left. And I guess we're not breaking news because this is going to come out on Thursday and people have been talking about it for a couple of days by this point, but we just got the news about Kirky K.
Yeah. So Kirk's getting benched here. They're going to be going with Michael Penix. So
they had to,
they really did need to make that move. It's been, you know, one touchdown to 9 interceptions or something like that over the past
over
5
games.
Yeah, so it's been pretty bad. And you have got all these young playmakers. You've got a Drake London. You've got a Kyle Pitts, and let's see what the young guy can do, right? I mean, I kind of brought this up on another podcast. I don't know how you make this move and go back to a Kirk Cousins. So this is where it gets tricky, is because there's a whole bunch of dead money that they're going to have to gobble up if they kind of get rid of him in the offseason. Me personally, and we kind of briefly touched on this before the podcast, this is like my dream scenario for the Cleveland Browns. I was waiting for some sort of Russell Wilson-esque move to be made at quarterback where the Browns could swoop in, pay the minimum, the other team picks up the other portion of the contract, and maybe we get a competent quarterback here in Cleveland, because that's the only way to fix this thing is to have some sort of contract like that on our books at the quarterback position, because what we know is Jameis Winston isn't the answer. Dorian Thompson likely not the answer, and Deshaun Watson, the however $100 million we owe him left, man, is not the answer. So so that's my 1 minute tirade about how I want Kirk Cousins on the Browns, and I never thought I'd say that in my life. But come on, baby, come to Cleveland, save us.
Let me ask you a question. So Jared Wackerly, he's on the show sometimes, especially in prospect season. Good friend of ours, part owner of the company. Played college quarterback. He played a little bit of time at Akron University, D1, go Zips. Do you think if he got an off season to prep and prepare, could he throw 1 touchdown pass in 5 NFL games?
I've caught a pass from him, and I heard it coming before it hit my hands. So he's got some zip on that thing.
Yeah.
And that's not training. So I think he could probably chuck 170 yards and maybe somebody down there would catch it.
Just Drake London's down there somewhere.
Drake London's down there somewhere, baby. Woo! So yeah, I think
All right, there we go. Jared Wackerly, as good as Kirk Cousins right now. You heard it.
I mean, breaking news. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's actually talk about this pass catching room now. Drake London, obviously we know he's there. He's a stud. Darnell Mooney just signed this offseason, so he's not really going to go anywhere until maybe 2026.
Yeah, his money is guaranteed 2024 and 2025. They can save almost $12 million by cutting him after that if they do want to move on from him. I think by then he'll be 28. So it wouldn't be urgent or anything, and he's performing well enough that I wouldn't think that's a move that they make.
Ray McLeod, kind of same kind of deal, but just a much smaller contract. But they could save some money there by cutting him. And then Casey Washington is the only other player on the roster with a contract at the position. So they'll add something, but I don't think it's going to be anything of note. They have Kyle Pitts. As frustrating as he is, they're obviously not making any big moves at tight end. So is there a small chance they could add somebody? Yes, more so than all the teams in the North, basically. But it still doesn't seem like all of a sudden they're a surprise team for, they drafted Luther Burden or, something like that. Like I would be pretty surprised.
I would be surprised. For whatever reason, I feel like, Atlanta doesn't have a lot of cap room. Under $8 million that they're projected to have next year. And it's not like, I don't think Kyle Pitts has got like a big cap number because he's still in his rookie deal. But I feel like he's one of these guys that could be a sneaky guy to be traded in the offseason. It just seems like it has not been working out here. He's a first-round draft pick. It's now been 2 regimes that have kind of failed to use him in any sort of capacity. I mean, obviously,
I have no idea what he would fetch. Like, what is somebody that young, that talented, but also that lacks that much production? Like, what would he go for?
Not much. Fourth round pick or something like that in the NFL. In the NFL, yeah, that's what these guys. I mean, they're
so young though.
He'll be counting 10.47, but he's got the same dead cap, so they actually wouldn't be saving anything. They're not going to move on from him. Never mind. I'm looking at the contract. They're not moving on.
Pipe dream.
Never mind.
All right, so they're pretty set. Carolina Panthers, though, this is a team that could and probably should add some assets. So we have Xavier Legette. You and I both liked him. He's had some good games. He's had some disappointing games. Kind of what you expect out of a rookie, especially in a team that is as bad as the Carolina Panthers. And I know Bryce Young has been better lately. Has he been good enough to prolong his career here, you think, or no?
Listen, that's a great question. I don't know that I have the answer. He's definitely done better. And if there's at least a chance that they could see him as a guy that they want to try out another year, and that's a jump forward for him, because there was a time when there was
no chance for a while,
and there was no chance. So I think he's progressed and has looked at least good enough that he's in the conversation as somebody. I don't know how you would feel good about that. I'll put it that way. So if that was
seems like
me,
another good Kirk Cousins landing spot.
Sure.
When you think of Dave Canales, what he did with Geno Smith, what he did with Baker Mayfield, like I could see it happening again.
Agreed. That would be a good spot. I just if I'm Dave Canales, I wouldn't feel good going into next season. So I would be asking the front office, we need to upgrade this position. It's the most important position, and I'm just not getting what I need out of it. So that's what if I was in charge, I'd be looking to upgrade that position. I just don't know if he has the belief in himself, the hubris, I guess, that he can make this Bryce Young into something. So I don't know what's in his brain. He's a coach. They're paid to coach and make people better. So you know what I mean? Like it's almost inherent and built into all of them that they think they can do it.
For what it's worth, there's a lot of teams in the top 10 that could use a quarterback, and we only feel good necessarily for sure about two of them, with Vegas probably taking Shador Ward and then the other one going to the New York Giants. But then 3 and 4, I think they're good with their quarterbacks, Drake May and then Trevor Lawrence. I don't see either one of them taking a quarterback. So then at 5 is Carolina. So they would have the next possible option unless some team traded up to 3 or 4 to take one of those guys. The problem is nobody else has really shown that they really deserve it. You have like a Jalen Milroe if you want to take that risk. You have a Quinn Ewers if you want to take that risk. Carson Beck if you want to take that. Like all of these guys have not just one, but like multiple warts that you're like, oh, I could see a scenario that it works with these players, but am I willing to use the number 5 pick to do it? I don't know that Carolina is after already failing with a rookie quarterback.
I would say this. If there's aspects of the offense that they can't run because Bryce Young is limited in some capacity, and they see a prospect that can make those throws, namely outside the numbers and stuff, which I know he's always kind of struggled with, then maybe that's what makes their decision for him. Like, I know this guy's going to be here as the third guy at number 5. He makes these throws really well. I think I can kind of teach him to do the other stuff and be on time and all that kind of stuff in the rhythm of our offense, and that will help elevate his game. If the answers are yes to a lot of those things, maybe that's how they pull the trigger and kind of move on from Bryce Young. So I don't know. With that said, since that's such a big question mark and who the hell knows, they got Xavier Legette, who you mentioned it, kind of underwhelming year, is scheduled to have wrist surgery. So some of the drops and stuff that he's had, I'm going to attribute to that, because I think he had an injury going all the way back to college and he re-aggravated it. It was kind of one of those things that he never took care of. So he's taking care of that. He's got the groin injury right now, which stinks. I'd love to see him kind of finish off the year. So hopefully he doesn't miss the last. There's 3 games left. Hopefully he only misses 1 week and then he's able to come back from the groin, because he's so close to getting that
Mhm.
500-yard mark that he needs to get in order to be relevant for fantasy purposes moving forward.
Yeah,
From Garrett's numbers that matter segments. So
that's right.
he's at 439 or something like that. He just needs to kind of
One big play.
put together a couple of good plays, and he'll crack that 500-yard mark as a rookie, and then all my anxiety can be alleviated from Xavier Legette. And Cooker is a guy who's I think flashed some a lot more than we
Jalen
thought.
Coker, all those coke heads out there. That's what his fans call themselves, cokeheads.
Cokeheads.
Yep.
Well, if you're looking for some blow for your nose, nothing beats a cokehead. So, Jalen Coker's okay, but I mean, obviously Adam Thielen's the other guy in the room, and he's going to be 35 next year. So,
yeah,
he's performed well. I don't think there's any reason to get rid of him. They can only save about $3.5 million by cutting Adam Thielen at the end of the year. So I think those three guys are kind of locked in. They got to just kind of add pieces around whomever they end up having at the quarterback position. And Jatavian Sanders, before the neck injury, looked good. Showed nice flashes. So I think that's a nice starting point.
Do you think if they're sitting there at 5, they're not in love with a quarterback, and Tet McMillan is still on the board, do you think there's a chance that they could take him there?
Listen, I don't know. You tell me. I haven't watched one tape.
I mean, he's a gifted player. Don't get me wrong. I think it's more of a, do they think that they really need another receiver, or would they be more content just waiting till day 2 or early day 3 to do that?
I think
they're going to add somebody.
I think they're definitely going to add somebody. I think how Coker finishes the season, and if Legette comes back, how he looks in the last couple of games will determine that, and will go a long way to determine that. Because I don't know what Tet McMillan's skill set is to even answer that. You know what I mean? Would he complement either one of those guys? Is he a replacement for one of those guys? I don't know.
All right, so let's go to your favorite team, and I'm just going to say the New Orleans Saints, and then the floor is yours. That's it. That's all I'm saying.
We're back with the $78 million of negative cap space that they're projected to have next year. Where do you start with them? How do you get underneath the cap when you're $78 million without doing some more crazy manipulation of the cap and putting dead money on the back ends of a bunch of bums contracts that are too old to do it? I don't know. If this is me, I'm starting right at the top with Carr. I'm getting rid of him. I'm cutting him as a post June 1st. I'm getting $26 million of that $78 million back right there, and I'm just going to keep these things rolling. I don't know how you do this to another coach. You already got rid of Dennis Allen, who was in cap jail every single year. They just kept having to extend these guys. I don't see how you got to make a clean break. This is the year where you got to cut all your dead weight. You're probably going to have to cut guys you don't want to cut. Similar to what I was saying with the Browns, Rashid Shaheed, he's 27 years old. He's a good player. He's coming off an injury, but you can save $3.7 million. All right. Sorry, Rashid. We got to move on. Cedric Wilson, $2.4 million by cutting him next year. All right, see ya. Sorry, see you later. $4.6 million by cutting Foster Moreau. All right, Foster, see you later. Taysom Hill, You get nothing. You get $175,000 by cutting him next year. So he's there. He's stuck, and he's stuck at $17.9 million. So what I'm doing is I'm going Taysom Hill. Guess what? You're playing quarterback next year for me at $17.9 million because that's the only way I can stomach you right now. So go play quarterback. Quit running the ball all the time. You're going to be throwing next year. So get your body right for that because that's what you're doing. And, Chris Olave, I love you, man. I might have to trade you, dude. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We got to clear some space. You're awesome, and I need to get cheap draft picks in here. And the only way I do that is by getting rid of some guys and getting as many of these cheap draft picks as I possibly can. And all the old guys on the roster, see you later. I'm going to eat it. I'm going to eat it this year and just be terrible. I don't know.
Yep.
That's me. I don't know how they keep doing it. They keep kicking kicking this can down the road. They'll probably just keep kicking it down the road because that's how they are. They're waiting for this cap to balloon up to $400 million or something unexpectedly to get themselves out of cap jail, and it ain't happening. So I don't know.
And that's the tricky part is they've won enough games too. They're at 5-9, so they're at the 10th pick. So they're not like you're not getting an elite quarterback there or anything. Their best bet, I'm with you. So this whole receiving game outside of Taysom Hill could look drastically different next year. And 2026 draft is supposed to have some pretty darn good quarterbacks. So if that's the case, like I am trying to not win a single game next year. And
not a bad year to tank. Yep.
Not a bad year to tank. And just get me Arch Manning. His grandpappy was here and did some pretty good things for us. So let's bring in Arch and maybe he can save the franchise.
Sounds like a solid plan. We'll see if they actually go with it.
We shall see.
We'll have to wait till the offseason. It's fascinating me to no end.
I know you love the Saints.
And not at all infuriating me. It's just fascinating.
All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan, Trey Palmer, Raheem Jarrett, and Ryan Miller. So obviously no Chris Godwin right now. Any chance they bring him back?
I mean, I feel like there's some young guys, and obviously Evans is there again next year. $6 million of his 25 money is guaranteed already. So I think he's there no matter what. Mm-hmm. Jalen McMillan is starting to come on a little bit here towards the end of the year. So as long as he kind of finishes strong and maybe we see anything out of either Trey Palmer or Raheem Jarrett towards the end of the season, I don't think so. I would never say never because I think he is such a good fit and was balling out when he was here.
He was playing so well.
Yeah. So I don't want to say no. Let me check their cap situation. Tampa Bay is not one that I had like in my brain. They have 27, almost $28 million next year. So they have the money to probably do it if they want to and kind of keep all those pieces together. So I'm not going to rule that one out. It might end up being the best thing for his
all
value.
Parties.
I mean, yeah, for all parties.
And if they don't, though, I do see them drafting somebody because they're invested in Baker. Mike Evans is obviously at he's in the back nine of his career. So 2 years left at best, probably after the season. That would be best case scenario. He's going to be 32 next year. That would be 33. I don't see him signing at 34, although Thielen's doing it. So who knows? But that being said, McMillan's good. I don't see him as a wide receiver one. I think he's more of a complementary piece. So I would not be shocked if they say, hey, we really like whoever it is in the draft and they go after a guy.
Yep. I could definitely see that being kind of a juicy talking point and a nice landing spot to kind of fill the void left by Godwin as the kind of heir apparent. We always thought Godwin would be the guy that kind of naturally took this position over as Mike Evans faded. And now it's Mike Evans just continuing to chug along and they're kind of moving out.
Baby.
Yeah, they're continuing.
A spot that I would love because obviously Chris Godwin was doing most of the slot stuff up until his injury. Luther Burden, I think, would be really fun in this offense. Think if you added a young Debo to this offense, that could be a kind of a fun fit, I think, for this team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Does he become interchangeable with some of these pass catching running backs that they have going on there too? So that might add a really fun, nice element there in Tampa Bay as far as you never know where these guys are going to be lining up and kind of bouncing all around because we've seen
kind of like San Francisco was trying to do for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen Rachaad White flex out some and go run routes as a wide receiver. So that would be nice to have those guys on the field.
He's a good pass catcher as well.
Yep, on the field together.
Tight end, I think they're pretty set. Cade Otton's his contract's through 2026. He's been real solid. I don't really see them prioritizing that there.
No doubt.
All right, Dallas Cowboys. It's CeeDee Lamb, and then it's everybody else. Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, Ryan Flournoy, and Jonathan Mingo. None of these guys excite me. None of these guys, I mean, some of them are signed as far as 2028, but they're all players that are on cheap contracts because they're late round picks that could all be cut or whatever. I think the Cowboys have got to get this situation figured out. Who is the wide receiver 2 on this team?
No doubt about it. They're going to have to draft somebody. I feel like both the Jalen's haven't done much to kind of ever pop more than here and there. They just kind of flash every once in a while. Obviously, Jonathan Mingo's done nothing as far as his Carolina days, and it's hard to tell when a wide receiver goes somewhere in the middle of the season.
Sure.
If they're fitting in or not. Their offensive language could be so different, and all the stuff that they're asking them to do could be so different. So there's still a little bit of hope in the back of my mind about Jonathan Mingo if he sticks around. With whatever's going on there in Dallas, whoever's going to be the head coach there next year and the offensive play caller, if he sticks around and has a full offseason there's still like a glimmer of hope for me for Jonathan Mingo. I know that you didn't really like him that much. Or no, you did like him.
No, I did. I like Jonathan Mingo.
So there's at least that glimmer of hope for me. But I think no matter what, like there's hope, and then there's like we got to get a guy. Like they still got to get a guy. You could have this hope over here, but that like we still have to bring in somebody in some capacity, whether that's high in the draft as a compliment to CeeDee Lamb, or whether that's a free agent. I don't really know.
Would probably be tough with the contract that they just gave to Dak and CeeDee and Micah Parsons. I can't imagine they have a lot of extra money floating around right now.
Yeah, that's a good call. So it sounds like the draft is probably the most likely scenario. So until I figure out who's the guy that can really play on the outside and be a dominant force out there, I don't know who to bring in there.
Isaiah Bond would be an interesting one. Think a lot like Xavier Worthy. So a good like field stretching type player, which would be good for CeeDee Lamb to play kind of opposite of him, and would keep him in the state of Texas. So I'm sure Jerry Jones would be happy about that. Tight end wise, Jake Ferguson, he's been solid. They drafted Schoonmaker last year, who's gotten a little bit of run when Ferguson's been out. Don't really see much happening right there.
No, I mean, all those guys are on rookie deals, and they're cheap, and they're producing. So there's no reason to change that.
Exactly. Let's move on to the Giants. Giants obviously led by Malik Neighbors. He's looked really good this year. I know the second half of the year hasn't been quite as good as the first once he came off that back from that injury. But that being said, still everything we could have hoped for the most part in his rookie year. And he's showing us that he can be an elite fantasy asset. Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Bryce Ford Wheaton, D. Williams. They've spent a lot of day one and day two capital on the wide receiver position past couple of years. But once again, we're going to be probably getting a new head coach this year. Yeah. So it's Malik Neighbors for sure. And then who knows?
Totally agree. Wan'Dale Robinson, there was a time when he was getting peppered with targets and was looking pretty good. I do feel like maybe he's the best. He would be best served as like the third wide receiver on a team. Mm-hmm. So I do feel like whomever comes in, Jalen Hyatt hasn't shown much of anything as far as being able to step up and be a wide receiver too. So I would think, if I'm coming in fresh into this scenario, I'm thinking I need to grab a number two guy, a bona fide number two that can really kind of help out Malik Neighbors and so they can't roll everything at this guy, all the coverages and all the double teams and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I'd be trying to do. From the tight end position, Theo Johnson looked good before going down with injury.
Yeah, he did.
Daniel Bellinger's, since then, he was like the forgotten man. He caught like nothing, got no targets like all season. And as soon as Theo Johnson goes down, Daniel Bellinger's looked fine as well. So, maybe get some 2 tight end looks or something like that. Get both these guys involved a little bit because they both proven to be capable pass catchers. So I don't know. There's some pieces there. The Giants have a lot of work to do as far as getting that thing right from the quarterback position and really the head coach. Who knows? A lot up in the air.
A lot up in the air for the Giants, but not as much up in the air for the Eagles. One of the easier ones for us. just brand new contracts for AJ Brown and Devonta Smith recently. So we know no time soon are they getting out of either one of those guys. They brought in Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, and Anais Smith. I anticipate that being more or less the same room next year. Tight end wise, Dallas Goedert. He's good when he's healthy. He's rarely healthy. But Grant Calcaterra has stepped up pretty admirably in his absence. So I think this is the same group next year.
Yep, totally agree, man. Grant stepping up, I think, was big because they needed somebody that could fill in when Goddard inevitably goes out for stretches. He seems to do it 2 or 3 times a year. So, Grant Calcaterra is
Calcaterra. Yep.
He was a guy that performed well in college and then almost retired, right, due to injury.
Yeah,
but then,
he was the guy at Oklahoma, and
decided to come back and has looked good. So he's a talented guy.
Last one in the East. This team has 2 players under contract at the position next year. The Washington Commanders. I was cracking up when I realized there was 2 players under contract. That's it. Terry McLaurin, obviously, he's got 2 more years left on his deal, and then they just drafted Luke McCaffrey. This team could bring in a high-price free agent. They could bring in a high-valued rookie. They could do both. When you have a guy like Jaden Daniels, it would not shock me if they were like, we want to get him every weapon we can. We've got the money to do it. Like, let's get him the guys.
Yeah. They have the 4th most space, or projected to have the 4th most space at $101 million. So they can definitely go out and buy a guy and draft a guy for sure. So T. Higgins, we mentioned him while we were talking about the T. Higgins stuff. That would, I think, fit well as far as, hey, he's this tall, imposing guy that would complement Terry McLaurin very well, and obviously kind of send Luke McCaffrey to the slot, which is probably where he belongs as far as his long-term projection. So that would fit really nicely, and obviously still some work to do at the tight end position. Ben Sinnott, 2nd-round draft pick this past year. We haven't seen much out of him. Obviously, Zach Ertz has played well enough that we haven't needed to see him. So that's been pretty good.
Could be on the Trey McBride trajectory. We'll see.
Absolutely could. Yep. So we'll see what happens kind of next year with Ben. If he takes off, Zach Ertz could very well be back, and they kind of transition mid-season, because we've seen that happen to Zach Ertz a couple of times as well. I feel like at the last 2 stops. So we'll see, man. I think Washington, they have a lot of ways they can go. The good news is the few guys that they have are pretty good. I mean, Terry McLaurin's very good. Ben
pretty exciting.
Is a guy that I'm very high on, and Luke McCaffrey, I actually kind of liked a little bit as well. So we'll see.
I was not a Luke McCaffrey guy, but we'll see. I mean, he's got the opportunity. I mean, as of right now, he's the only show in town. So another spot where I think Chris Godwin too would be really nice coming out of the slot there, kind of that possession receiver to go with Terry McLaurin. So he's another one that I could see potentially being on their short list of guys that they'd be interested in.
Yep, no doubt, man.
All right, heading out west, Arizona Cardinals. I think this team is probably going to add somebody. I think maybe somebody to replace a Greg Dortch, kind of that smaller, quick jitterbug type receiver. Because right now they have Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, and Xavier Weaver. So a bunch of tall, more physically imposing receivers. And obviously Trey McBride and Tip Reinman that they have at the tight end position. So they're not going to add anything big, but I do think that they could add somebody. We saw Hollywood Brown out there for a year, and he played pretty well. Could see him coming back. So something of that type of realm.
Something of that ilk. And I do think that offense probably is missing one of those smaller, faster guys as well, just looking at that lineup. So I could see that kind of happening, but nothing major for fantasy purposes. So I think they got their horses, so to speak, and Trey McBride and obviously Marvin Harrison Jr., kind of with a sprinkle of Michael Wilson in there. I think those are the guys that are going to be the show for the pass catchers.
All right. That was a pretty easy one. LA Rams. LA Rams, they're always an interesting one. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Jordan Whittingham, who's played a little bit here and there and been decent when he's had the opportunity. And then Xavier Smith as well. That's just kind of a throw-in piece. Colby Parkinson, Davis Allen at tight end. The Rams actually have their first-round pick this year, which doesn't happen a lot, although this will be the second year in a row. And they took Jared Verse this past year, and that's worked out very, very well for them on the defensive side. Could we see them, with Cooper Kupp getting older and the tight end position being a little underwhelming, could we see them go pass catcher early on in the draft?
I would love to say yes, but I think there's bigger holes on that team and a better way to build it, especially when you've had success with guys like Puka Nacua and Jordan Whittingham here, like later round guys. I think their process is pretty solid at the wide receiver position. They kind of know what they're looking for, and are able to pull guys like kind of obscure guys. I mean, Whittingham, I just didn't think had much athleticism, but he has shown. I don't know if it's they identify guys really well or they coach guys up really well. As far
probably
as
a little both.
Yeah, it probably is a little bit of both, but I've seen more physicality and even just more wiggle out of him than I ever saw in college, and that is the one part that we don't leave a lot of room for, which is improvement, growth out of young athletes. So if that's me, I'm gonna stick with these guys that we have and add a later round guy and just hope that it's okay. That being said, I wouldn't mind a tight end being added to this room. I don't know that they love using him, so it might be.
They don't seem to a lot.
This
Except
feels
for
like
that
another
one, like Tyler Higbee month that he went berserk. Other than that,
right? Exactly. So the one note I would add is they always seem to be trying to get rid of Cooper Kupp. So I did want to put in his numbers. So he's got a $5 million 2025 roster bonus that is already guaranteed, and his cap hit goes up to $29.8 million next year, and they can save $7 million by cutting him. So if there's any sort of questions as to, do we want him? Do we not want him? They can save money by getting rid of him. He's got a really high cap number. They have cap space, so I don't think it's like hugely important. They have almost $58 million worth of cap space. So I don't know that it's necessary, but it always just seems to be in the rumor mill that they're looking to trade him. So I just wanted to mention the numbers.
Nope, I think that's a fair thing to add. Let's jump to San Francisco. Somehow San Francisco has an incredible and also a terrifying room all at the same time. It's Debo, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. I mean, when you're going that deep and Ricky Pearsall is your wide receiver 4, you're in a good spot. But on the flip side, Debo's trending in the wrong direction. Ayuk's coming off injury. Juwan Jennings is kind of for the first time in his career becoming a consistent asset. And Ricky Pearsall's an unproven rookie pick. So while it seems amazing, it's also, I don't know.
I agree. It's a little bit of an I don't know. So to go, I guess, I think Debo is like the most likely guy to be off of this team, and his cap hit goes from $15.8 million, or it's $15.8 million in 2025. He's got $31 million of dead money in 2025, despite the fact that this is the last year of his deal is 2025. So he's got 4 fake years on the end of that deal. Similar to the stuff we were talking about with, the Browns and New Orleans Saints. So that's a little bit tricky, right? As far as how you get rid of this guy and then still carry him on your cap. They're okay in cap space. Where are they?
But they've got a big question as to what do they do with Brock Purdy?
They do.
So that's what could make that cap space go away real quick.
So they have $67 million of cap space. So they have plenty of money theoretically. But like I said, and you mentioned the quarterback needs to be signed and how much of that gets chewed up next year. I mean, you can work these things to have that kind of be deferred more down the line as far as the cap hit and stuff like that. So
Sure.
there's stuff that they can do and still be able to digest that Debo cap hit or the cap, the cap hit of 15.8 million. So I don't know. Ayuk's there. Juwan Jennings is there. His 24 and 25 salaries are guaranteed. Ricky Pearsall obviously there. So Debo's the only guy that I could see kind of getting moved, and I would think that has to be a trade. And we've talked about a lot. We've talked about a lot of these teams that need players, and there's not a lot of wide receivers. So I feel like that's maybe the most likely scenario for Debo leaving. I don't think there's a scenario where he gets cut or anything like that. But I do think that Debo Samuel's getting traded is within the realm of possibilities.
I really thought that strongly too. And I remember even for fantasy, he was my get out while you can guy, which so far looks pretty good because he's been atrocious the second half of the season. But if you're a real NFL team and you're looking at a 29-year-old receiver that's almost more like a running back that maybe has some attitude issues that have kind of shown up lately, and like, are you willing to take on that kind of money for somebody that might be not the same guy anymore?
I think that depends largely on how the end of the season goes. And maybe that's why he was complaining about not getting the freaking ball. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he wanted out. He knows that if he doesn't perform, there's no way he's got any sort of leverage or nobody out there is going to want him. And obviously he didn't do himself any favors by basically calling for the ball and then dropping the ball. Like
on a
literally
walk-in touchdown.
Yeah. So I don't know. Debo he's trending in the wrong direction for sure. I don't know what that means. I don't know if there's anyone out there that's like, you know what, I do need this specific skill set, or everyone's just kind of like, Debo, you lost a step. You didn't have a step to lose. You've lost a step, and now you're not the same player that you were 2 or 3 years ago. Which is what it kind of looks like to me. So I don't know.
We'll see.
It's tricky. We'll see.
I don't anticipate them adding anything significant though at the position because they have all of the guys already there.
I think even if they get rid of Debo, I think they're fine with, as long as Ayuk is healthy, I think they're fine with Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, and Ricky Pearsall.
Agreed.
So
and George Kittle, he's going to be there, but he's the only tight end on the roster right now. So they are 100% adding to this position. We have no idea if it'll be a rookie or a veteran or whatever, but they're 100% adding to the position just because they need to.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Last one, Seattle Seahawks. Whoops, I clicked the wrong thing on my computer screen here. Seattle Seahawks, Jackson Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. We've been talking about it for a while. Lockett seems like, not to use a pun, but a lock to be cut this offseason, right?
Yeah. So the Seahawks are another team that are projected. They're the third of 3 teams that's projected to be over the cap next year. And they're only going to be like $5 million over the cap. But Tyler Lockett's got this crazy cap number that goes from $18.9 million this year, which is already pretty high, up to $30.9 million in 2025. And they can save $26 million against the cap by cutting him. So when you're $5 million over the cap and you got a guy that you could save $26 million and he's going to be 33 years old and his production has dropped off, it's very easy to make that decision to kind of move on. I think the one that is not quite as easy, and I think will depend on how the coaches view him personally and as a fit for their style, is DK Metcalf. He's another guy that his cap number goes from $15 million to $31.9 million in 2025. And they can save another $10 million if they get out from underneath him. I don't think it's as urgent.
No.
From a production standpoint, he's still producing. But I think it has always been I don't want to say off the field because it's not off the field attitude. It's not off the field issues. It's on field. Can he keep his head on straight? Or is he going to kind of blow up type of situations for?
And we have seen JSN kind of take over as the wide receiver one in this offense the past month and a half or so. We've kind of seen that switch finally happen, and we were wondering if it ever even would. And it does seem to have done that. So it does make that position kind of interesting. Wouldn't be surprised if they do something there at the position where, with Tyler Lockett being gone and Metcalf, who knows what's going to happen, and he's also going to be an unrestricted free agent in 2026. It wouldn't shock me if they took like a round 2 or 3 type of guy. I could see that being in the realm of possibility. Or looking at the tight end position. Now, they don't do a ton at tight end. Noah Fant, he's got another big cap jump, and they could save quite a bit of money there. You have written down $9 million cutting him after the season. So he's another one where if they decide that they want to utilize the tight end more, maybe they prioritize that in the draft. And then they have AJ Barner, who's a fine player, but nothing too exciting. So I think this is maybe not the most obvious team to add pass catchers, but a sneaky one that could.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if the scenario that I painted with both those guys being gone, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and who knows, even a Noah Fant, then they're in big time need of bringing in some players. So it kind of all depends on how they feel about those guys long term and how much of that cap they want to get cleaned up quickly. I mean, they could do it in a few different ways. They could do it by restructuring deals and all that. Sure. It's only $5 million, which is not a lot.
They're not a bad spot. Clear.
Right. So it's not the worst we've ever talked about. It's nowhere close to Cleveland or even obviously New Orleans, who's $78 million over. Just one last time. Had $78 million.
I threw him under the bus, ran over him, then I backed that bus up, and then I hit him again, and
Yep.
All right.
So Browns will be there. Browns will be there next year. No, don't wrap it up yet. Browns will be there next year if they cut Deshaun Watson. They'll be staring at that same kind of goofy number.
Kirky K, we're waiting for you, buddy.
Yep.
All right. Well, then that wraps it up. AFC, NFC. We've dug into all of these rooms, the positions. I think these are good things to just have in the back of our mind, remembering, hey, even don't stress out if this team trades for a receiver or something. They have 2 guys under contract. They have 3 guys under contract. Doesn't mean your favorite player is necessarily gone or whatever. So it's good to know these, knowing the cap situations, all that kind of stuff. Definitely helpful information.
No doubt about it, man. I actually enjoy these shows. I don't know if you've noticed this. I love digging into the cap and just kind of projecting who's going to be getting the heck out of there. And
the games and stuff lean more towards Rich, but the numbers, I mean, that is kind of your job. When we really get nerdy with numbers, that's a Matt show.
It kind of is. All right, bro. Talk to you next week.
See ya.
Adios.
Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.